Hello, friends. Today, my topic of discussion is Michel Foucault and Discourse, Discourse Analysis, Discursive Formation, and Discursive Practices. Let's start. First of all, we should know what is discourse. Discourse is a generalization of the notion of conversation to any form of communication. There are many definitions of discourse given by many writers. Chilton says that discourse is the use of language. Fillingham says that discourse is anything written or said or communicated using signs. Jagger writes that discourse is the flow of knowledge through time. Potter says that discourse is talk and texts as parts of social practice. Van Leeuwen says that discourse is social cognition, especially specific ways of knowing social practices. In everyday language, discourse usually means conversation or discussion encompassing also all forms of communication. Following the work The Archaeology of Knowledge, published in 1969 by Michel Foucault, discourse is viewed as a system of thought, knowledge, or communication that constructs our world experience. Michel Foucault is called the father of discourse theory. Foucault was interested in the phenomena of discourse throughout his career. Foucault adopted the term discourse to denote a historically contingent social system that produces knowledge and meaning. He was interested primarily in how discourses define the reality of social world, the people, ideas, and things that inhabit it. According to Foucault, discourse is constituted by a group of sequences of signs. Insofar as they are statements, the term discourse can be defined as a group of statements that belong to a single system of formation. For Foucault, the logic produced by a discourse is structurally related to the broader episteme, that is, structure of knowledge of the historical period in which it arises. Discourse are produced by effects of power within a social order. This power prescribes rules, categories, and criteria for legitimating knowledge and truth. These rules and categories are considered a priori, that is, coming before the discourse. Discourse can be described as a precondition for knowledge. For Foucault, a discourse is an institutionalized way of speaking or writing about reality that defines what can be intelligibly thought and said about the world and what cannot. For example, in The History of Sexuality, published in 1976, Foucault argues that a new discourse of sexuality had changed the way we think about desire, pleasure, and our innermost selves. In Foucault's argument, discourses about sexuality did not discover some pre-existing core truth about human identity, rather created truth through particular practices of power or knowledge. So, discourse draws the line between reason and madness. Discourse includes and excludes. Discourse is a form of power. Now see the discourse analysis. We construct the world through the way we talk about it and act toward it. Discourse theory is associated with postmodernism and its skepticism of the natural sciences. Foucauldian discourse analysis focuses mainly on power relationships in society as expressed through language and practices. Discourse theory is concerned with questions of power and often with questions of institutional hierarchies. Such hierarchies lead to domination and resistance. Talking about the term discourse or content analysis, the word discourse refers to talk, which refers to the way in which people describe or explain their experiences. Discourse is, as Foucault admits, a rather slippery notion in his work. At the most basic level, he uses the term to refer to the material verbal traces left by history. He also uses discourse to describe a certain way of speaking. Kendall and Wickham outline 5 steps in identification of rules and in using Foucauldian discourse analysis. Number 1. Discourse is a body of statements that are organized in a regular and systematic way. Discourse also discusses how those statements are created. Discourse sets narratives of what can be said or written and what cannot. Discourse talks of how spaces in which new statements can be made are created. Foucauldian discourse analysis makes practices and material discursive at the same time. Friends, definition of discourse shifts slightly between types also. Discourse analysis is a useful tool for studying the political meanings that inform written and spoken texts. Discourse analysis is prominently being used in interdisciplinary fields. Generally speaking, discourse analysis can be divided into little d discourse and big D discourse. The discourse with the small d refers to language in use, such as spoken communication. On the other hand, the discourse with the capital D refers to socio-political discourses, language plus social and cultural connotations. There are more than one type of discourse analysis. Common forms of discourse analysis include critical discourse analysis, conversation analysis, Foucauldian discourse analysis, genre analysis, narrative analysis, etc. Now, friends, let's see discursive formation. In The Archaeology of Knowledge, published in 1969, Foucault studies the process of discursive formation defined on the basis of a set of relations. Discursive formation attempts to show that any object of the discourse in question finds its place and its law of appearance. The discursive formation is roughly equivalent to a scientific discipline. Foucault says that in order to properly describe the relations between various discursive statements, we must not ignore any kind of discontinuity. We must not ignore any discursive break, threshold, or limit. Discursive statements cannot be properly analyzed if we have pre-existing assumptions of continuity. The conditions for the unity of discursive statements may also be conditions for disunity. Examples of such discursive statements include similarity of objects, modes of expression, concepts, or themes. Discursive formations, according to Foucault, are groups of statements which may have any order, correlation, position, or function as determined by this disunity. A discursive formation is thus system of dispersion. Discursive formation, in the sense of Foucault, has 4 indispensable characteristics. First one is discursive formation are the statements refer to the same object. Number 2, discursive formation are enunciated in the same way. Next, discursive formation share a common system of conceptualizations. Number 4, discursive formation have similar subjects or theories. Now, friends, let's see discursive practice. Discourse refers to a historically and culturally specific set of rules for organizing and producing different forms of knowledge. Discursive practice is not a matter of external determinations being imposed on people's thought. Rather, discursive practice is a matter of rules which allow certain statements to be made, a bit like the grammar of a language. A discursive practice in Foucauldian term is the process through which dominant reality comes into being. Discursive practice is a very nebulous process, and Foucault focuses on questions of power. Foucault's notions of governmentality and biopower from his later work are helpful to understand discursive practice. Foucault focuses on formal and semi-formal institutions like the state, the law, school, clinics, prisons, the family, race, gender, and sexuality. Foucault focuses on what the critical theories and neo-Marxists call the culture industry, like the media. Foucault notoriously is concerned with how power is inscribed on the body at the level of people's movement and perception of themselves. Foucault focuses on how does power produce docile bodies is another way in which he poses the question. Biopower in this sense refers to the capillary living network like veins, hairs of how power is propagated and inscribed on docile bodies. So friends, thank you very much. Hope to see you in the next video.